Okay, looks like we've given enough time for everyone to jump in here. We're going to go ahead and start. With that said, hello everyone. Welcome once again. Thank you for joining us today for the What is WVD webinar. My name is Christian, Business Development here at Akins IT, and today I'll be joined by our Solution Architect, Brandon, to discuss WVD. First, just a quick overview and what we're going to be doing today. We'll start off with an intro of Akins, then we'll head into the WVD discussion and demo with Brandon. During the presentation, feel free to drop some questions you may have in the Q&A section, and we'll be sure to answer those later. Lastly, we will close with instructions on how to redeem your $20 Amazon gift card. So with that being said, let's just get started. Ooh. I see Depot just posted Texas, viewing it from. Really cool. But yeah, to give a small look into the company that's actually behind the solution we'll be explaining today. Well, we didn't invent it, but we're behind it. We're behind doing it. Our three uniques is just a good example to give you an insight of who Akins is. Our three uniques start off with number one, tailored IT infrastructure and security for mid-sized organizations. It's just a part of our process in every case to learn about your environment. Every solution is based off of your case, and just security is a priority for us. Number two is dedicated team to doing what's right for you. This is a big thing, and you'll recognize it immediately on any call with us. We're aware there's several companies that might do similar to what we do, but none of us are order takers here at Akins. We sift through several solutions on your behalf with our own expertise tied to it to provide what works best for you at the end of the day, and just not us. And it's just not unusual for anyone here to go the extra mile to educate a client. Some of you watching, it isn't your first time for a webinar explaining a new solution, or maybe you received some info on free training we sent over that was needed for your employees. Similar cases like that. And lastly, of course, serving as an extension for your IT team. It's a big relief when people find out that we just want to work with them as much as anyone on their team, hand in hand. We aim to partner for success, learning the ins and outs of your organizations first and the environment, and educating you in the process so you also have the tools and not rely on us the whole time. So you're able to just rely on us like anyone on your IT team. Okay, now let's just hear from Brandon about WVD. Okay, it looks like we're having a little trouble with the sound. We're going to try that again. Desktop. Thanks for joining me, Brandon. Let's jump right in.
Hey, thank you, Christian, and it's really great to be here. Looking forward to talking about one of my favorite solutions that Microsoft has recently developed.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So for people watching today that haven't worked with WVD yet and don't know much about it, let's just start by breaking it down. Can you do that for us?
Yeah, of course. So Windows Virtual Desktop, or WVD, is a desktop solution that runs exclusively in Azure. It is a virtual desktop solution that's really similar to traditional RDS deployments, but it does have some key advantages over the legacy designs. So first, WVD offers pooled or multi-session workspaces that are exclusive to Windows Virtual Desktop. This means I can configure my session host to serve multiple users at a time instead of needing a dedicated VM for each person.
Got it. So for instance, I can have 10 users logged into a single VM, you're saying, instead of needing 10 individual VMs per user.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And on top of that, WVD is very simple to manage and easily accommodates the diverse workloads of any company. For example, you can have a host pool of GPU-powered VMs and have a separate host pool of standard SKU VMs. It's this functionality that allows you to provide the necessary compute resources for each department, which can still help you reduce your overall operating costs.
Really cool. So if I'm understanding correctly, I can have my more powerful VMs, you're saying, assigned to my marketing department is dedicated to them that uses more heavy video and design apps intensive, and my 5 p.m. Rocket League crew I haven't told anyone about, while simultaneously having my other VMs that are less horsepower assigned to departments that don't need that extra, just saving costs there, right?
Right, so that way we're not giving users access to hardware that they may not necessarily be taking advantage of.
Okay, that's really
Yep. And then last, WVD, this is a true Windows 10 desktop environment. It's not running on a server operating system. So this is really great from a user experience standpoint because users will get the exact same look and feel in the virtual environment as they do on their local PC.
That's really nice to hear. You mentioned a little bit about the end user experience earlier. Can you show us what that's like?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's actually a really good place for us to start. So first, Microsoft offers two convenient ways for us to connect to our WVD session. We can use the remote desktop app that's available for Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS devices. And there's also an HTML5 client for users that don't have the remote desktop app installed. But let's start with the Windows Remote Desktop app. So here we have the remote desktop app running on my Windows laptop. We can sign into the app using our Office 365 credentials, and once authenticated, we're able to see all of the host pools and resources that our IT department has assigned to us. Connecting to our session is as easy as double-clicking the host pool we want to log into. In this instance, I'm going to use our demo workspace. Once we're logged in, we can run the app in full screen or windowed mode, and it also supports multiple monitors. This allows users to work in the WVD environment exactly as they would on their local desktop. The start menu options are the same, and we have access to all our apps, including Word and Outlook. And we still have the ability to run other line of business apps like QuickBooks.
Wow, that's pretty neat to see. I'm sure people would agree it looked pretty simple to use, but one question I have is there any VPN or third-party apps needed when accessing WVD?
That's actually a good point to bring up, Christian, and the answer is no. We don't need to use VPN or go through a bunch of hoops to connect to the WVD session. WVD actually allows us to move away from legacy technologies like client VPNs that can often be a headache for IT teams to support. Instead, administrators provide users with a URL to connect to and leverage Azure's identity management and governance tools to control and grant users access to specific resources. It's through the WVD management blade that we can easily select which users or groups can access each host pool.
That's pretty interesting. Can we see what that looks like?
Yeah, definitely. Let's jump back in. Here we have the WVD management blade. If this is a first-time setup, getting started is as easy as clicking the Create a Host Pool button. Otherwise, this is where all the management of our existing pools takes place. For example, we can go into our demo pool, and if we wanted to add another session host, we just need to click the Add button. This new VM can be deployed from a template or golden image, so this new session host is identical to other hosts in the pool. We can assign users or groups to specific workspaces from the management blade by navigating to the application group menu. For example, in this setup, we can see I have assigned members of the WVD demo group access to this pool. Further, we can still leverage additional security policies like conditional access to enforce features like MFA. And last, we have the ability to monitor and view the health of our WVD environment through the Insights tab. We can see logs if a specific user is having logon issues and monitor performance statistics so we can determine if we need to scale up a workspace. One thing you might have noticed, Christian, is that we no longer need to worry about RD gateways, licensing servers, or connection brokers like we did in traditional remote desktop deployments. Azure now handles management of these services through their WVD PaaS offering. This makes it much simpler to administer our remote workspaces, and we can easily scale up or scale down these pools based on company needs.
Yeah, easier to manage for admins, less of the headaches you get from typical VDI deployments. I'm sure that's great to hear from some people. Let's talk about another common challenge though with VDI deployments. It's the need for persistent storage. This means for preferred applications like Outlook that everyone uses that has it, they want it to run like their local PC when they click on it. They don't want to wait for everything to populate. I know VDI solutions generally use dynamic storage as a solution for cost savings as well, but this can cause a bit of a lag when using. You can kind of tell you're in a virtual environment when clicking around. Does WVD have a way around this though?
Absolutely, and a great question. Since integrating FSLogic's technology with WVD, we're now able to overcome both of these performance issues. FSLogix allows us to still take advantage of cost-saving benefits that come with dynamic storage, while creating the feeling of data persistence. So it really does provide the best of both worlds. Let's jump back into my session and see this technology in action. When I launch Outlook right now, we can see that my inbox is already hydrated, and we don't have to wait for Outlook to download all my email from the cloud. Because of FSLogix, we're still able to utilize key features in Outlook like cache mode and search indexing to provide users with the same performance they're used to on their local desktops. FSLogix even supports all of OneDrive's features in the virtual environment while still running on non-persistent storage. If we check my tray icons, we can see my OneDrive sync icon over here. And when we navigate to our OneDrive folder, we can see what data is still in the cloud versus data that's being saved locally for files on demand. The beauty with FSLogix is that we've containerized the user profile data, so we can attach that data in real time to the session host you're brokered to, even if you've never logged into that host before.
Yeah, that's right. Normally when I connect, I get routed to a random VM host in our pool, like a ping pong ball spinning in the cage is connecting.
Exactly. And thanks to FSLogix, the storage actually gets mounted to the host and it provides the experience that your data is running right off the C drive.
Oh, yeah, that's really cool to see what FSLogix has changed about WVD. Something I did want to ask about though, I come across this a lot when speaking to clients, supporting their non-company owned devices, especially nowadays. They also need to give access to their vendors, their contractors, constantly adding new users and removing them as they go. How does it work with personal devices, WVD, and all those end users that don't already have the native client installed? How are they able to connect?
Well, luckily, Microsoft actually has a supported remote desktop client for pretty much every platform. But if you do ever find yourself in a situation where you're working on a device that doesn't have the remote desktop client downloaded and installed, there is an HTML5 client we can use, and it's supported on every modern browser. So let's check it out. In this example, I used Edge to sign into the default RD web URL provided by Microsoft. We log in using our Office 365 account, and once authenticated, just like we saw with the remote desktop app, we can now see all the resources that have been assigned to our account. I'm going to select our demo workspace pool again, and once our session loads, we can see that the desktop we were presented with is identical to the one we saw while using the remote desktop client.
Hey, that was great. The HTML5 version looks as easy to use as the remote desktop app. What about other platforms though? You know, as we know, the world is pretty mobile at this point. People want the ability to access company resources from anything, anywhere. I finish all my emails at the end of the day from my Samsung Smart Fridge. Makes it easier for snacks.
You know, Christian, well, thanks to WVD, no computer, no problem. Your WVD session, it's still accessible when you are without your laptop. Let's actually check it out what it looks like when we log in from my Android phone.
Please.
Here's the RD client running on my Android phone. The interface itself is simple and easy to navigate, and logging into our WVD session is still seamless. Once that session loads, you'll notice right away that I still have access to all the same resources and applications that I did through the HTML5 client and the Windows Remote Desktop app. It really is the same great Windows 10 experience, just on a different device.
Okay, that was awesome. So it seems like any platform I jump on, Android, iOS, Mac, Windows, doesn't seem to matter with WVD. Definitely learned a lot here today. Thanks for joining me though, Brandon. Do you have any final words for everyone watching though?
Yeah, of course, Christian. Thanks again for having me. I just want to thank all our viewers for joining us as we got to show a glimpse of some of the unique features that make Microsoft's WVD the perfect choice for mobilizing your workforce. And as a reminder, WVD is available through the Azure Marketplace, and we definitely recommend all our users check it out.
Hey, thanks. Okay, we heard it. We hope everyone enjoyed that today. Now we're going to open up the floor to some questions. We already have some in the Q&A, but if you have any just on top of mind, be sure to just shoot them over and we'll answer them right now. We already have one question on the board. Brandon, I'm going to go ahead and ask you this. What are the options for connecting WVD to on-prem resources?
That's actually a really good question. So we can still leverage site-to-site VPN connections from the Azure environment to your on-prem resources. So for example, if you have a file share that hosts data on-prem from the WVD environment, you can still access and take advantage of that. Similar to if you have an application server on-prem, you can still, across site-to-site tunnel, still have connectivity to those resources.
Awesome. Yeah, and again, I just want to add, by the end of this, we'll mention our contact info, but if any of your questions you just want to expound on by just calling us, we'll be happy to talk more on it. Moving on to the next one, what is licensing like with WVD, Joe asks.
Yeah, so to answer Joe's question, Microsoft's made the licensing for WVD a lot simpler than with traditional RD deployments. Because we're getting rid of the connection broker and gateways, you don't need RD cals. And more often than not, most users actually already have rights to use WVD with their existing Office 365 licenses. If you have, for example, E3, Office Professional, with Windows 10 rights, come with those licenses. So you can actually start using WVD today.
Awesome, thank you for that. I have another anonymous asking, what is cost like?
Yeah, so the cost is going to scale or will fluctuate based on your setup. For example, if you're using GPU-powered VMs versus just standard SKU VMs that have basic compute and memory usage. But overall, the average cost that we've seen for WVD is around $7 a month per user.
Thank you.
And I did want to add, Christian, Azure does provide a cost calculator, so that way you can play with multiple scenarios using services like reserved instances, which can help lower costs across the board, as well as playing with different user scale sets to see how many users you want to try to put on a VM. So it does give you an idea and let you kind of plan ahead as far as what to expect cost-wise.
Yeah, I'm sure that's really useful. Thanks for adding that. And again, if you don't want to do the math or just have a question, again, we can just talk about it and let you know ourselves. I don't really like math myself, to be honest. Okay, I have another question from Joel. What is your licensing like? Oh, we've already answered something similar. Let's go ahead and move on to anonymous. Are the licenses named or concurrent? So the question was, are the licenses named or concurrent? Tongue twistering myself here.
So in this case, they're going to be concurrent. You don't actually have to worry about the Windows VM licenses, so no server licenses required, anything like that. It's really just user-based licenses. As long as each person logging into the WVD environment has rights or has access to Windows 10, they'll be able to log into the session.
Awesome. And then I have a question from Mike. What if you don't have O365? We kind of mentioned similar, but just to expound on that again.
Yeah, sure. So this solution is exclusive to Microsoft and Azure. So you do need a Microsoft subscription in order to access the WVD environment or to utilize it.
Gotcha, thank you. And then I have a question from Joyce. Thanks for submitting a question with your name, Joyce. It's nice to put a name behind it when I pass it off. Does WVD allow you to share other softwares, like a software that has one license but multiple users can use it?
Yeah, definitely. This is actually a really great feature within WVD. First, because it's Windows 10, you can run applications that only run on desktop OSs. So you're not limited to scenarios where you can't move to the cloud or have a remote solution because you're running on like a server OS, for example.
Yeah.
But for software, perhaps you're using like Adobe licensing through Adobe Cloud or Creative Cloud. We can run Adobe just fine in the WVD environment. I think this also ties us into some other common scenarios, especially with like CAD and design software that used to offer server type licensing. I know Autodesk recently changed their licensing to a per user basis, but this also will support and run applications like that.
Awesome, thank you for answering that. We have a few more. I love this, keep piling them on. We'll be here all day. Are local devices such as scanners still accessible if you are primarily working in this environment?
Yes, we can use pass-through for all the features like clipboard, printers, even your camera and microphone will actually be able to be passed through to the WVD environment. There's a pretty unique plugin that Microsoft has developed that'll actually allow you to run Teams video and voice calls straight out of the virtual environment, which I know traditionally a lot of remote desktop solutions, it's been historically advised not to run applications like soft phones or any sort of like UCC application because we can't really control bandwidth or prioritize QoS in someone else's data center. But Microsoft has actually made it to where we can run video and voice calls right out of the virtual environment.
Awesome. Hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, definitely. How does your storage work, and are there costs involved? Another anonymous is asking.
Yes, so storage would be separate to the WVD environment. When you set up your FSLogix user profile containers, that is going to be held on a separate storage account or blob in order to house that data. And that cost will vary based on the type of storage you're using. For example, whether it's like a standard SKU SSD or premium SSD storage, as well as how much data itself, as it goes up in gigs or terabytes. So that does fluctuate. And we are able to accommodate or kind of pre-calculate those costs using the Azure calculator.
Thanks. Okay. Hopefully that answers that. Then I have another question from Steven. Now, this might be a few different explanations depending what we're looking to talk about, but he's asking, what is the difference between WVD versus using existing VPN software? It's a good question that I get regularly asked from prospects. Brandon, would you be able to answer?
Yeah. So the real benefit to WVD is from like the end user perspective, there's not a whole lot of steps that they need to follow in order to connect. They don't need to dial a VPN. There's no VPN client software needed. The IT administrator really just needs to provide access to the security groups in Azure AD to say who's able to sign in. For example, you may have users that have Office 365 in your Azure AD tenant, but they don't all actually have to have access to WVD. So that's how we can control, or rather like act as the gatekeeper to that environment. It's still an encrypted connection when you're going into the WVD environment. The nice thing is because you're in the cloud, all of your data is kind of isolated in one place. You don't have to worry about users accessing data across a client VPN, loading it on their local laptop at home, because you don't know necessarily, are they running AV software if this is like a BYOD type appliance. That's the really nice thing WVD offers, is it does kind of help you centralize and control where data is going and who has access to it.
Awesome, thank you for that. Okay. Let's see if we have any more questions here.
Yes, Stephen. So yeah, Azure Active Directory would be required.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. I have another one here. Well, I mean, this one we can all answer. Does Akins IT provide deployment services for WVD? That's a definite yes. Brandon, if you want to touch in anything on that.
Yeah, nope, you kind of summed it up, but we've definitely done this multiple times and clients have really enjoyed it and had a lot of success with it.
Yeah, definitely. Especially nowadays with so much remote work. I know about 40% of California is still remote right now. It's definitely a big topic for us, why we're having a webinar explaining the solution today. But would love to speak to you more about it, of course. And you'll probably be speaking to Brandon too, because he is a very well versed, of course, solution architect here at Akins that knows about the solution. So get to talk over the phone to the person presenting today. How exciting, right? Let's see if we have any more questions. Okay. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any more questions. I'm gonna give it a second more if anyone wants to pop over some last minute ones.